Welcome everyone to an all new Deep Cuts Live. I'm your host Antoine Reid, and I have with me today Laurel Tilley from AJ Fernandez. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Like you're one of those people that I have always seen, especially at the trade show, and I always say I should go to AJ Fernandez's booth early on, but you usually have a line of fans and people talking to you. And then by the time I get, I have an opening in my schedule, you've lost your voice for the
I
trade
was gonna
show.
say this is gonna be a voice comment, isn't it?
Yes. And so that happened the same way like it happened last year, where I was like, maybe now I can. And then I was like, oh no, she's lost her voice. That never mind. And then
I
this
will
year,
say I did not this year though.
okay, it sounded like I was from afar because I was like always like just walking around doing my rounds, and I was like, "Is she?" And I was like, "I don't know." It kind of sounds like maybe she's strained, maybe, but
Oh, definitely. It was on the cusp, but I will say this was the first year that I did not totally lose it because, ooh, sorry, it's windy out here. It gets real like squeaky and strained, but yeah, there's been some years straight up the last day, like I could barely even do interviews. Like I'm embarrassed to go back and try to like find myself on YouTube and hear me like squeaking through it. So,
well, since it's your first time on Deep Cuts, we want to get to know you in a fun and creative way. So we have an icebreaker question for you.
sure.
Usually they're off the wall, but I know that you are like an industry vet, so I did wanted to make it a little bit more in line with the industry. So my question for you to like kind of get the conversation started for today is, if you could swap jobs with anyone in the industry for 1 week, who would it be and why?
That's a good question. Ooh, I don't know. Swap jobs with anybody in the industry for a week. I mean, honestly, I would love, like, I've spent a little time down at, various factories over my years in the cigar industry, right? And I've always found, particularly the sorting process really interesting, because, like, women do it exclusively because they see color more vividly. And I've always enjoyed, like, kind of the more, like, minutia detailed process. And I think it would actually be fun to sort of, like, be in the factory for a week and kind of just like go through the sorting and go through the day to day and be able to like really experience, like we see it, we know it, we've been down there, like we understand, but we don't really understand until we're actually like in it. So I don't know. I think that would be like fun and sort of eye-opening, educational.
I know there's Cigar Journal magazine sent one of their editors to do that, to basically been it was a long time. It was like a long period. It was like a month or so at a factory, just going through all the different jobs and stuff. So it was intense.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I think after a week, I'd be like, I'm good. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, that's how I am with like, whenever you go to a factory and then they get to the part where they're just like, okay, now you can roll your own cigar. I'm like, no, I've done it. I tried it. It's not I'm not coordinated enough to do it. Yeah.
Antoine, I cannot roll a cigar. I can actually bunch really well, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure with practice, right? But like, I don't feel like I have the dexterity for it. I'm a horrible roller. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Yeah. And it's just like the bunching and the whole, the whole process of that doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I remember I tried it at, I think, the Davidoff factory, and it was a woman kind of leading the thing, and she was just like, no, like, don't do that. And it's just like, just taking it over. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Do it.
The first time I did, have you ever done one of those like stemmer machines where you like put the leaf in the machine and then it like rips the stem out and then it cuts the leaf into the two sections?
I've seen it, but I haven't done it.
So it's like more finicky and complicated than it looks. You think like, oh, just feed the leaf in and it'll rip the stem out and bing, bang, boom, shit's done, right? No. And at the first time I did it, the lady, she was being very kind, but she was like definitely laughing at me. I was like, I'm so sorry. Please don't let me do this anymore. I'm just like rooting tobacco at this point. And it's like it's controlled by the foot like a sewing machine. And so it's all like manual and trying to get like the process of holding the leaf in the right place for it to, pull through and like have the foot control to do it. Yeah, it's the factory stuff is complicated.
I'm curious, and this is like another random question, but what's your favorite tattoo that you have?
Ooh, that is a good question. I don't know. I have so many good ones. for different reasons, I guess. I don't know. I really like this crystal ball on here on my back because, to be honest, it was like a Halloween flash tattoo where we went to a tattoo studio and they had a bunch of different flash tattoos on a dartboard, and you got to like pay money for a dart, and then you threw it, and then whatever you got, and like, it's not, I think, objectively like my coolest tattoo, and it doesn't really have that much meaning, but like the whole experience of it was so fun. Like, I was with my husband and some friends, we made like a whole thing of it, and just like, I don't know, it was like a really fun process to get this one. And then I got a random tattoo artist that I had never used before, and then he ended up being great, and then I got 2 more from him. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Cool. I just like noticed your tattoos, and I was just like always curious. I have no tattoos.
Okay.
I'm not that type of person, so I don't think I'm built for it.
That's fair. You know, I waited a long time. Like, I always knew I wanted tattoos, but I was like 26, 27 before I got my first one. And then, you know, people say it's like an addiction, and I don't necessarily think it's an addiction, but it is true. Like, once you get 1 and then 2 and then 3, it just is like so much easier. I feel like I used to be really dedicated to like having a meaning behind it or like doing the perfect thing. And now somebody's like, hey, you want to go get a Halloween flash tattoo? I'm like, yeah. It's just like, it's just like, you get to a point where not that you don't care, because like, obviously still care what I put on my body, but yeah, I don't know. It's not for everybody though.
Yeah. I think some people make it look cool. I would not make it look cool. I was in the trend, like right there. Like, people would see it like, okay.
Don't sell yourself short, Antoine.
That's it. That's it. No more tattoos for anyone.
Stop. No, you would look great with tattoos, I'm sure. You can have like a cool, you know, like tobacco leaf sleeve or something. I mean, I don't know if you're like dedicated to tobacco enough to get a tattoo of it, but you know, it could be cool. I've seen a lot of really, really good ones.
I would have to think about it. I would have to ask someone like you and Matt Booth about that.
Fair enough.
So anyway, thank you for indulging my curiosity with those 2 questions, icebreakers. But I want to know, like, how did you get into the industry? I feel like we have really strange, like, origin stories of how we get into the cigar industry. So how did you get into the industry?
How did you get into the industry first?
I have been laid off from, I used to work at a gardening magazine.
Oh, okay. Do you enjoy gardening?
Now I do, just because like I need something to disconnect from technology on the weekends. And
yeah, that's totally valid.
It doesn't help that we're in a drought right now, but it is a little bit puts you on edge, which is not what it's supposed to do. But
sure.
So I was working at a gardening magazine. It got bought out, and I ended up looking for a different job. I did what most graphic designers do and say, maybe I'll just do like my own thing. And then suddenly I was like, I don't want to do my own thing. I just want to go somewhere where I have to do whatever I need to do. So I answered at the time, this kind of dates me, but it was a Craigslist job ad. It was like looking for a graphic designer, and it was like a nearby city. And I was like, yeah, I can drive there, I guess. And so by that time I had done so many different interviews and stuff, I honestly didn't care. So I was just like the best interviewer, I guess, because I walked in and I was just like, oh, whatever. It was like, what do I have to lose? So they loved my attitude. And then at the end, they were just like, you know, we do tobacco magazines. Do you have a problem with that? I was like, as long as you don't want me to, like, it's fine if I don't do, you know, like smoke cigars or cigarettes. Yeah. At the time, I was like, that's fine. And I was like, I just want to come in and do my job and go home.
Sure. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So they were like, cool. And I was like, and that's how I got into the industry, 2010. And obviously I've evolved from that point to the point where I have way too many cigars that I'm trying to keep track of and trying to smoke through and all that kind of stuff.
I understand that. But so we've been in the industry like a very similar amount of time then, because I started in 2011. So, but yeah, sometimes it just happens like that, right? Where you're like not really intending to go that path. I mean, I was not intending to go this path. When I was in high school, did I say, hey, I'm going to, you know, work in like brand development for a cigar company? Like, obviously not, you know, like that's not something that you necessarily planned, right? But when I was in college, I had taken some time off because just frankly, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I had gotten into cigar smoking as a hobby just through some friends. And I went to college in Milwaukee, And there were a couple cigar shops, and there was like a hookah bar. So, we were 18, 19, not going to bars. Obviously, at the time, the smoking age was 18. So I was just hanging out at the cigar shop, which I subsequently got a job at. So when I had like taken some time off of school, I'd already been a customer there for a couple of years and was like, well, this seems chill. I like the product. I know the people. Like, they pay above minimum wage. This seems like an ideal situation. So I got a job there and ended up working there for about 6 years, which was great. I feel like it really shaped who I am as a person, just like with meeting all sorts of different people. I mean, the cigar world really, like, there's a customer, Doug. He was a really major customer when I worked there. And he always used to say, it takes all kinds of people to make a world, which I feel like is a really good, like, so when people drive you crazy, you're like, okay, well, it takes all kinds of people to make a world, but I always was like, I really loved my experience there because I just like met so many different types of people from so many walks of life. And, I never intended on staying in the cigar industry. I just took this job because I liked cigars and I liked the people. And then when I was graduating, it's funny, your story about like kind of going into this interview with nothing to lose, right? So I had been like applying for like marketing and like PR jobs. Like, I hadn't graduated yet. I wasn't graduating until December of like 2016. Yeah. And through some mutual acquaintances, like of reps, I had an interview with General Cigar to be like an events person. And I just was like, oh, I have zero experience with this. I haven't even graduated yet. Like, I'm going to do this interview just to do this interview to get some interview experience. But like, I went in with zero expectations. So I kind of had a similar attitude. Like, just like very nonchalant and like wasn't really nervous about it because I had like zero expectations from it. And then all of a sudden it turned into like, a second, and a third interview. And then I got the job. I was like, okay, well, this is great. And then, I worked at General and I was there for 6 years and I've been with AJ going on 4 years now. And it's kind of one of those things that just like sucked me in. And 15 years later, here I am,
I know, it's crazy. Like, to think, not only have you been at AJ 4 years, but in the cigar industry for basically where it's become a career.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, and I'm only 35. So I'm like, okay, well, I mean, theoretically, like if I stay in the cigar industry, right, like I can have a very, very long career with this industry.
So at what point did you, I know you kind of touched on this, but at what point did you think, okay, maybe, I can turn this job into like a career?
Yeah, honestly,
it takes some energy. It takes some thought to say, like, I'm going to stay in the cigar industry and like continue to build on what I'm doing and go from events to marketing to a whole bunch of other stuff like you're doing now and brand ambassador. So at what point?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if there was necessarily a point. I think especially in the beginning, I just sort of felt like this is what I was doing. I was like making money and having fun and, it was like a fun industry to be in. And then all of a sudden I found myself like, doing different things like media stuff, for example. Like, I love doing interviews. I love doing like podcasts and stuff like that. I love talking to people. But when I first like started having to do interviews and stuff, I mean, it was horrifying. I was like, wow, I am so out of my comfort zone. Like, this is not even funny. But it like really forced me to tap into like, I think, aspects of my personality and my skill set that I like didn't realize maybe that I had or that I was like good at. And I think once I started being like opened up to these things, like, I do a lot of like public speaking, right? Conducting events and trainings and stuff like that. And yeah, so once I really like got on the road and started like working with all these people and doing like this sort of thing, I was like, oh wow, and seeing other people in the cigar industry and like their careers, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's been people doing this for 20, 30 years and there's like careers outside of sales and, nothing against sales, but like, I never wanted to be strictly a sales rep. I'm more like kind of like marketing, branding, PR kind of stuff. Obviously there is a sales component. Like, I have to be able to talk to people and sell the product at the end of the day. Yes. But like, seeing the opportunities within the industry, I think happened pretty early on. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I feel like I can reasonably see myself doing this for a while. So yeah, I would say within maybe a year or so, once I got onto the manufacturer side.
So starting in events and having the 15 years experience that you do, I know when I look back at 2010, when I started, like, marketing was completely different how it is now.
Yeah.
Luckily, we have some very good changes, some other things that just make it very difficult to market. But how have events morphed in that time? Because I know that retailers often are thinking about events. They know that, getting people in their stores, trying out a product is super important. But at the same time, it's almost like everyone is thinking like, how do I make events better, or
Yeah.
events have gotten stale? So what's been your experience with events in the
Yeah.
cigar industry?
I mean, I think, like any other aspect of this industry or any other industry, right? Things ebb and flow. I feel like when I first started, when I was in retail, which would have been from like 2010 to 2016, events were awesome, and events like really moved the needle for us. And like I worked at a shop in Wisconsin, so like February rolls around, you're making like no money because it's like nobody's coming in February in Wisconsin to smoke a cigar, and like it does. So we like really relied heavily on events, and it brought the people in, and they were really great. And then like early on the manufacturer side, I think they were steady and beneficial. Mm-hmm. And then COVID, of course, changed the landscape for a lot of things. And I feel like, virtual events during COVID were really, really difficult to conduct. It's just like, it's really hard to hold a room full of attention, a room's attention, virtually on a screen with 20 people sitting in a lounge or whatever, or like everybody just like sitting at their table. Right. And I think after COVID, they kind of went back to normal, but I don't know. I think in the last like 4 or 5 years, they really we're much more strategic about them. And we had AJ are not like a huge events company. We do like the big multi-vendor major events, and we do like strategic in-store events, but we just don't really like the landscape. I think is just less event, like one night only driven, where we find ourselves being more successful with like month-long promos, and like people have a chance to like try this cigar, and then maybe if they can make an event at the end of the month, like that is beneficial. But like trying to put all of your eggs in the basket for a one-day event, just to me, and I think the rest of our team, it's not like what it used to be. We just have to like kind of change how we promote our product and get it into the hands of new people. And it's hard because like I like events, I like the connection, even if I don't think about it an event successfully, like, okay, it's great to sell boxes, right? But like if I can get one person to smoke an AJ Fernandez cigar, to add it into the repertoire, right? To smoke it once a week even, great. Like that, the long-term implications of that, is much more beneficial to, to the brand than just like, yeah. So it's just, I miss like that kind of like forced connection. Like I'm in your face, like telling you about this cigar, But yeah, I don't know. They're like, what do you think? I think they're just like generally less popular and effective.
I think it's almost like everything. It's almost like websites. Like, especially in the cigar industry, like I told someone, or I made the comment, I was like, people have websites in the cigar industry, but they don't update them because people don't go to websites like that, like they used to. Yeah. Like they Google stuff, and they like Gemini answers the question, and you're totally. Like, oh, I got my answer. I don't need to scroll down anymore. Yeah. Or ask, your home devices that get, what the question, questions and stuff.
For sure.
So it's just like, as you said, I think it's really hard to keep people's attention these days. It's as some marketer called it, it's the TikTokification of our society. Yeah. Where we have like very short, limited, we're just used to scrolling real quick and going on to the next topic. So I can imagine, I know on the marketing side, just getting someone to sit down and read something is really difficult. So I can imagine on the event side, it's like, come to this event, like take time out of your schedule, then come, drive here or whatever, come here, sit down, listen to it, and, smoke a cigar, listen to, us talk about this cigar in the company. I imagine that to a lot of people, they're going to feel a little bit of resistance just because it's just a change in society.
Totally. It is, and it just, you need to figure out how to navigate that, right? Like nothing ever stays the same, right? The only thing, what is the cliche saying? Like the only thing that, is inevitable is change, or right? Or the only thing that stays the same is the fact that things change or whatever. It is true because the industry is always changing. And I feel like now we have been in it long enough to like see these changes. And even just like, what I find really interesting is like the shift in people's like palates or preferences, and just how there's like years of popularity of certain tobaccos, and then you kind of have like a more of a trend for, like one certain tobacco or a certain kind of like strength profile. So it's just, it's interesting to see, but you just, keeps us on our toes, right? You don't want to get stagnant. So great. Keep up with it.
So at what point did you decide that you wanted to make that change in your career and go over to AJ Fernandez?
Timing in life is everything too, right? And I feel like sometimes like the timing of stuff in my life is never really aligned. And this was just sort of like a stars aligned situation. And, I had gotten to a point where, I love my time at General with Macanudo and all those, all my people there. But, you just kind of get to a point doing what you're doing where you kind of like top out, right? Like there's really what I was doing in that position was very unique. And like, there's only so much you can grow in this space, right? So it just got to a point where I was like, I like the industry and I still want to be here. I want to be with a brand that I stand behind, obviously. Like if I have to, if I'm doing this sort of interview, right, I'm smoking a cigar, I'm going to places, like obviously it has to be something that I personally stand behind. The opportunity with AJ arose, and I'm still in front of the people. I'm still doing this kind of thing, events, staff trainings like I was, but I also get to be a little bit more on like kind of the back end of like brand development side of it too, which I really like. And there's just, we're a smaller company, but there's just, they don't like put you in a specific box and say like, this is your role, this is what you have to do. It's sort of like if you have an idea or you want to do something, or you think this is a good idea, they sort of just like kind of empower you to do it. And so it's cool because I've been able to sort of like continue to grow in a way that works for me and what I am wanting for out of a career. But I still get to stay in what is a relatively small industry and see everybody. So I think to make a short answer really long here, get to a point where you kind of hit that ceiling and just you need more like growth and development.
Yeah, I think I've said this on a different episode of Deep Cuts where, one of the business books I read said the best thing you can do for yourself is learn when to leave the party.
Yeah.
Like you have to understand like when it's time for you to leave and move on for your own benefit.
Oh, for sure.
You definitely tap out of a job at a certain point. So I think being there as long as you were, I think you stay there a very long time, which in today's job market, seems like people like to jump around pretty quickly and everywhere, but it seems like
I don't want to jump around. You settle in somewhere, exactly. You meet your people, like, I don't want to make a change. Like, I'm happy,
I know, like, you don't want to be like the newbie and you're like every other year where it's just like, I
know. We hired a guy, a rep for Texas a couple years ago, and he's like, I really just like, I don't want to be the FNG anymore. He's like, we need more people. It's nice to feel like you're settled in, and you like, oh, remember when that person worked for us? And you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. I was there for that era. But no, it's good. But thank you. And I did have fun there, and I just had fun in the industry, and also like, you're still going to see these people, right? Like these are people I work with all the time and that I would still consider friends. So it's nice that, PCA and these big multi-vendors, you still get to connect with everybody. You just like collect all these people over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like when I met you, I was at the trade show, not this year, but last year, it was on the setup day. And I think you were talking to several other people from different companies. I know Hakeem, and it was a whole bunch of other people that we were sitting there talking. So it's fun to see people interact from different companies and stuff like that. I think that's one thing that people don't understand about the cigar industry is like there's a lot of, it's not all separate compartments, separate groups and whatever. Like you just end up mingling with everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Which is good. There's not really animosity. Everybody's kind of coming together over this common product. So I can't really speak for other industries, but it seems like this is sort of unique in that way.
You were saying that at AJ Fernandez, the culture there is, if you see something that could change or that you think could be different, do it. So when you came on board, I'm sure that you kind of gave it a little bit of time just to kind of get to the feel of the land and everything that was going on. But what's something that you noticed that you were like, we could do this differently here, and brought that to their attention?
I would say, well, so like one I guess project that I'm still like proud of is like when I came on board, we didn't have like a good like comprehensive like list of all of our brands and like a quick synopsis about like everything, wrapper, binder, filler, strength, whatever, to like leave behind. And to me it was something like so straightforward to be able to leave with customers and just like get it in front of them. And and I love writing and like putting that kind of thing together. So I was like, oh yeah, we need some like sort of like leave behind materials, and like let's have some like structured training materials when we were starting to hire more people, and just kind of stuff like that. And also like I'm a big culture person. I think that a company that drives well together, like their people drive well together, just like are more successful as a company. And all of the people that worked for us before I got there, like everybody like individually was really nice, and they got together for PCA and stuff, but like I don't know, didn't seem to like chat too much like as a group. So as much as I could, I tried to like facilitate more like conversation and just like call and check and be like, hey, I just called to say hi, just like how you doing, I haven't talked to you in a while, just so there's like and like they would talk to Frankie all the time, who's like their direct boss and everything, but I just try to like reach out to them and just make them feel like, hey, I'm not calling to like check in on you. I'm like simply just calling to say hi. Like, I just want you to feel like, you're not like alone out there on the road. So, that was like, I guess, kind of a bigger deal for me. When I worked with General, they always people like reps were working with people, right? Regional managers and me and other brand ambassadors and stuff. So just being a smaller company, less personnel, I tried to make it like, part of my mission to try to like bring a little bit more like connection.
Mm-hmm. So, tell us about AJ Fernandez, because I think I've been doing deep cuts now since the pandemic, and you're actually the first AJ Fernandez person on the podcast.
Fair enough.
Tell us about AJ Fernandez. Like, what makes it different from, the net cigar and the humidor next to it?
Well, I could go into so much minutia, right? But I think really what sets us apart, if you don't know AJ Fernandez, if you don't know us as a company, we're a Nicaraguan-based company, and we dabble in a lot of Nicaraguan puros. With the addition of Amar, which is new this year, we only have 8 different brands, and I think it's like just like 19 different cigars. So it's really like within our AJ portfolio, like not a ton, but like nearly probably 40% of those are Nicaraguan puros. So AJ has this really unique ability to take tobacco from Nicaragua and make these really, really diverse blends, even if they're all puros. And, if y'all are not familiar with what a puro is, it just means that the wrapper, the binder, the filler, and the production, all the components are coming from Nicaragua. In the same way that like wine manufacturers will pull grapes from different regions because it yields different flavors, it's complex, it's balanced, whatever, right? But sometimes when you're working with puros, it's really hard to get that like flavor differentiation, especially when you're doing 7-8 different puros within your portfolio. So AJ really excels at agronomy and like identifying interesting areas in Nicaragua to grow tobacco that is different. Hybrid tobacco, I mean, the way he ferments, he's got a very long fermentation process, which helps give him that kind of like signature stamp on all the tobacco. We not only make cigars for us, like within the AJ Fernandez portfolio, and that would be like New World, San Lotano, Enclave, Deuce Gloria, Bellas Artes, Last Call, Ramoniones, and Amar, versus like, H. Upman or Romeo and Julieta or, stuff for Southern Draw or whatever it may be, right? Anything that we make for us or contract manufacturing bears like a really signature flavor profile from AJ. So like you always know it's AJ tobacco. So I think that's like really what sets us apart. And I'm a big music person, and I always use the example of like Dave Grohl as a drummer. When he drummed for Nirvana, or when he drums for the Foo Fighters, or he drummed on a Queen of the Stone Age album. And you can always tell that it's Dave Grohl drumming because he's got this very distinct style, right? And that's kind of how AJ is with blending. We as like a company, like from his own portfolio, he's not putting out anything that he does not personally want to smoke. So you will notice Like, we don't do a ton of really mellow cigars. Also, our 660s aren't really like traditional 660s. They're like box press 58, some of them, because AJ doesn't really love 60 ring gauge cigars, but understands that like the US market sort of demands it. So like, he's very true to himself and what he puts out. And even if it isn't for everybody, like, you can always know that it's going to be to his likeness and quality, and something that he would personally smoke. So that to me is like fundamental in, I think, a successful company. We don't want to just put out things to like, I'm not saying he's like releasing things to placate people, right? But, he really wants to put out something that he is truly like passionate about. And he just, and he hopes that translates to the consumer. So yeah, I would say those are some of our strong suits as a company, and we're responsible for, I don't have an exact number on it, but between portfolio and contract manufacturing, a huge portion of cigars in the market. And, I'll run into people at stores and they're like, oh, I've never smoked AJ Fernandez. I'm like, okay, well, what do you smoke? And then they list 5 cigars and 3 of them are something we've made, So I think people just don't understand like how, like, the scope of his influence on the industry sometimes as well, even if they aren't familiar with our own brands, within like what we would consider portfolio.
Are you finding that a lot of people aren't aware, like, we always talk about wrapper, binder, filler, but like there's also the line item on the list of, what makes a cigar is like the factory. Because like you said, there's a lot of people probably who are smoking AJ Fernandez cigars that aren't even aware of it. They're like, no, I'm smoking so and so. It's like, no, but AJ makes that cigar. Exactly. It's like, it's his style. Like you said, it's like him lending his style to that brand. So are you finding that more people, like, maybe as an industry, we need to talk about the factory level a little bit more to get people to focus on that? Or is it just, kind of a part of the industry that you just, that people are unaware of where their cigars are really made?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be one of those things. There's going to be people, I'm not like trying to discount anybody's preference of this knowledge or not, but there's going to be people who know and care, or, they want to learn. And there's going to be people who are like, yeah, whatever, this is a cigar and I like it, right. And they don't like need to know the minutia. I think it helps us as a brand for people to know that their cigars are coming from AJ, because, you have a brand like Altadis, right? A company like Altadis with like A. Chutman and Romeo and Julieta, a Monte Cristo. I mean, these are like household names that have like been well established in the industry. Whereas like, New World is our seminal product. And a lot of people, know New World, but like New World isn't in the cigar vernacular in the way sometimes like Monte Cristo can be, right? Just for people who maybe aren't as like, new age nuanced, and they're like kind of stuck in their, what they've been smoking forever, right? So, being able to do these collaborations with these sort of companies, helps bring awareness to the AJ name and to the brand, which is great. But then, yes, you kind of run into this, like, if somebody smokes, I use the example of the A. Chutman, the Nicaragua, right? People love that cigar. It's a great cigar. And they're like, oh yeah, I love AJ. I smoked the cigar, this A. Chutman. I'm like, yeah, well, that's great. That's a great, amazing cigar, but like, it's not ours. And then you kind of explain that difference. And people seem receptive to it. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things. Like, it seems like more people are understanding, even in the, I guess, nearly 4 years I've been here, I have seen a shift in kind of people understanding the differences, which is awesome. But yeah, it's just, you're never going to be able to like get that information to everybody. So, we work with what we got.
So what is, you mentioned New World. What is like AJ Fernandez's like most best-selling cigar?
New World Toro Oscuro. That cigar is an absolute banger for us. I mean, wow. I mean, it's a great selling cigar for us. And the New World Toro, specifically the Toro size is what sells, but New World Oscuro is really like our most popular product, and New World as a line in general. I think it sells well because it's like a tour of Nicaragua. We're using the 4 major growing regions, so Esteli, Jalapa, Condega, and Ometepe. So you really get a sense for what like Nicaragua as a growing country has to offer and the diversity of the tobacco. And also it really highlights AJ's blending style. So I think, for somebody who maybe isn't familiar with AJ Fernandez and they sort of want to get a sense for what he has to offer, that cigar just checks so many boxes. So I'm not surprised it's our number one seller, but yeah, that cigar goes absolutely gangbusters for us.
What feedback have retailers kind of given you about some of the newer stuff? We're going to talk about some of the new stuff, but some of the newer stuff that AJ has been working on.
Well, Amar, it's not because I'm sitting here talking to you and like trying to talk about this product, but Amar honestly has been doing super crazy well for us. It's been a really, really good release, and it's so exciting because, as a blend story, it was really important. It was a cigar kind of to like mark this point in AJ's career where, it was a bit more tumultuous. We had the fire at the factory. He wanted to release this as sort of like a thank you to the industry. He was really diligent about trying to like keep the price as low as possible. So we released it at PCA for about $11. So we wanted it to be just like accessible for the everyday smoker. And it's just like it's a nice, like kind of medium bodied, approachable blend. So I think for people who maybe only casually smoked our own portfolio blends, or maybe we're not as familiar with AJ Fernandez and like, what we did, it seems to be really well received with, people who weren't as big of AJ smokers prior to this. So yeah, it's been really good. I mean, like I said, I know it's easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, it's doing really well, but actually it has been doing really well for us. So that's awesome.
So you introduced
now I'm talking
Amar.
Too much.
So you introduced Amar at the trade show this
Yes.
year. You just kind of tell us a little bit of the story behind it, but what is the story behind this cigar? Like I know you kind of mentioned it, but because I want to get into like the storytelling behind cigars, because I think the stories tend to sell a cigar a lot more than just, your basic wrapper binder filler.
100%. I think people care more about, sort of like anecdotal conversation and stories and kind of the process behind it versus wrapper binder filler, right? So I agree, but we even have like on the inside of the band, it says, thank you for your love and support. Obviously, AJ did not individually sign all of these. We had a guy, he's like, wow, he signed all of these bands. I'm like, friend, that is printed. Like, no, I'm sorry. But yeah, so, so last year, right before PCA, so this would have been, this is 2026, this would have been 2025. 2 weeks before PCA, we had a factory fire in our production facility. So we lost a lot of packaging. We lost a lot of packaged, ready to go cigars, not only from our own portfolio, but also from some contract manufacturing stuff. So unfortunately, a lot of other companies were affected as well. And I think that also like helped people understand the scope of like what we do as a factory when they're like, oh, AJ blends. And then all of a sudden, like some of their normal stuff was back ordered and they're like, oh yeah, it's as a result of the fire. The industry really came together. I talk all the time about how like it's just a very like welcoming and community-based industry, and it was really on display. After the fire, other manufacturers stepped up and they, helped like lent personnel to move things, to lend their factories to store tobacco, brought rolling tables, just really, really continued to support in a big way. And consumers as well, just trying to like buy AJ, be supportive, weather the storm if they had any back orders, right? So yeah, AJ really wanted to release a cigar that was, price conscious and, consumer friendly and, kind of just thank everybody for their continued support during this time. So Amar, the story behind the name. So if you pay attention, like lunar faces, the phase directly after full illumination is called a waning gibbous. And waning gibbous is not a sexy name. Obviously, we're not naming a cigar waning gibbous. But the concept behind this lunar phase was actually really on point, kind of with the message that we wanted to convey. So we really didn't want to be like stuck in the past of like, oh, we had this fire, woe is me, we wanted to be more like, hey, with gratitude, we're moving forward, kind of like looking ahead. So this phase elicits like gratitude and reflection and personal growth and perseverance and just everything about that made sense for, yes, this message we were trying to convey. And AJ is of Cuban descent, but he is also Lebanese, which is like a lesser known heritage of his. So Amar actually means moon in Arabic, and it means to love in Spanish. So we wanted to pull in that, like, you know, the lunar phase aspect of it with moon, but again, you know, we're not naming it waning gibbous. So yeah, and then it also is able to like kind of bring attention to his dual heritage. So that's kind of the concept behind the brand and the blend.
I think that's cool. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to try it, but I have one.
Antoine, I would have sent you one.
Well, I haven't seen it try it. It's like I haven't gotten around to it yet. And actually, like, I was saving it for today. I was going to show it and do all the stuff, and then I was like, I left it somewhere. I have it still, but it's crazy. But anyway, I'm looking forward to trying it because I think I tell people as a graphic designer, I look at cigars in a completely different way because I look at like band design. So for me, like that one's a completely different one from what you're accustomed to from AJ Fernandez. Exactly.
Yeah.
I like the band design. The color is different. It's not that usual what you're accustomed to or used to seeing and stuff like that in our world. So it feels like a special cigar.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you know, it's full run, 4 sizes, but we wanted to, like, in terms of the feel, we wanted it more kind of like moody, celestial. You know, we do a lot of reds, but, you know, kind of that royal purple and the gold. Yeah, we're really happy with the way it turned out. And it does pop, you know, it's different. Although apparently this year at PCA was the year of purple cigars. So
it's funny how the industry is shifting and getting more accustomed to, like, or more comfortable, I should say, using colors, like a different color palette.
Yes, versus like black, gold, red.
Yes, exactly. Like when I first got into the industry, like that's all you saw, and it was like if a company, like, I mean, even in the graphic design, like designing a magazine, they're like, you cannot use the following colors. It was like, why? It was like,
yeah,
our people do not respond to these colors at all. Huh. But now it's gotten really different, thankfully.
Somebody early on told me that it was because of the way that the colors look with the cigar wrapper, which does make sense, you know, that like blues over a Maduro maybe, or like that like reds, golds, and blacks and like silvers and like kind of those Julie tones work better visually with the color of a cigar wrapper, whereas like your blues, yellows, oranges, whatever is, I think, you know, obviously now we have gone away from that. I mean, you look at brands like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of brands with a lot of color, right, at this point, but which so I get from like a visual standpoint that was more classic, but yeah, like you need something that pops on the shelf.
So I'm curious, what's something about AJ Fernandez himself that most people, I know you said his heritage is something that most people don't really know about the Lebanese part, but having worked with him now for several years, like what's something about him that you can share to kind of enlighten us about who this man is? Because I think he's such a big figure in the industry, and yet he's a mystery to some people.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And then there's other people like, you know, Rafael Nadal who could tell you, has story after story about AJ Fernandez. So
yeah, you know, I'm curious, like, but they hang out, so.
Right. I know.
You know, I'm gonna be honest with you, like I don't personally know AJ that well, you know, and I have I guess like little tidbits and stories, but I just don't know. I mean, I don't think he's gonna be mad, but you know.
That's why I said that you can share. Yeah. I was like, no, not something crazy.
No. I mean, and I don't really know anything that crazy, right? But, you know, I guess really what struck me about him was that when I first came on board, it's just that he's so involved in everything, but not in like a micromanaging way. And just like you know, he truly, like, this is his company, this is his passion, and he is there, you know. And to your point, when you said, like, people don't really know AJ, no, he doesn't really come to events, and, you know, he goes to PCA, but beyond that, you know, you don't see him as a figure at these big multi-vendors like some other industry people. And I'm not claiming that these other people, like, aren't in their factories and fields and everything. But AJ just truly thrives down in Nicaragua. You know, he loves being in the fields. He loves being in the factory. Like, he is hands-on. Like, he is the guy. Like, obviously he has, you know, a team there that helps him with the day-to-day operations. But I mean, he really, like, is involved. Like, he's the guy. And so that's where he that's where he exists best, and he just loves to be there. So I guess I was very impressed seeing that he really like not only understands, but like does every aspect of his business down there. So I would say that's probably, if people want to know about AJ, that's why you don't see him.
He's working.
Correct.
He's busy.
Correct. He's not just like chilling,
Oh, no. He's like busy.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, that man, Frankie, my boss, first time we went down to the factory, I've told the story before, but he was like, oh, AJ's driving terrifies me. He's like, I don't want to ride with AJ. And we were like all trying to fit in the van to like go to our Ocotal factory from Esteli, and there wasn't enough room. And Frankie had to ride with AJ, and he's got this like terrified face. And so they ended up leaving, I swear, like 20 minutes after us, and they still passed us on the highway. And he's like, he just drives so fast. I'm like, I honestly am convinced that he's trying to pack like 36 hours into a 24-hour day, which is why he drives so quickly. So I guess maybe that's an AJ tip. He drives very quickly because he's got so much to do.
He does. Like he's like, you want to like optimize your time. So it's like we can go a little bit faster. It's Nicaragua.
Just like, a wee bit. Just a wee bit. It's a Pan American highway. No one's paying attention.
Exactly.
You're just like. But
so like for retailers who are watching this today, like what do you want them to know about AJ Fernandez that maybe I mean they have but so much room on their humidor shelves, but this is a brand I'm thinking would just name wise sell pretty easily. But what do you want them to know about this brand?
For retailers particularly, I think I would just want them to know that just because it bears the AJ name doesn't mean that our portfolio products are the same as like our contract manufacturing products. Sorry. But there are certain blends that we do for ourselves that we're using proprietary tobacco. These are tobaccos that we're only using on our products. There are like certain hybrids, we're only using on our products. So everything that we're putting out is really 100% to AJ's likeness. He's not working within any confines of, we want this blend, but we want your tobacco, or, we have this concept for the blend, can you make something that fits these parameters, or whatever it may be, right? If AJ's name carries weight in your shop, which like not trying to be egotistical, but like it probably does to some degree, because I mean, frankly, like AJ's name carries some weight. I've never had anybody come up to me and say like, AJ, they're like, oh man, I love everything he touches turns to gold. I love every AJ product. Great. Awesome. But portfolio products are different, and they're really 100% him, and, different tobaccos than what we do for some other projects. So it would behoove you to try some of the portfolio products. And
a minute ago, you touched on the factory fire, which I'm glad you brought up, because I felt like, for some reason, a lot of the industry, there are several fires in the industry that, kind of really made headlines. And then as the news cycles happen, like you don't hear much about it afterwards. But tell us about how the recovery effort went, where things are now today, about that fire, because like I said, I know a lot of people, like you said, kind of came forward and wanted to help and support AJ in any way possible after that happened. And then we kind of got lost in like the news cycle a little bit.
I mean, it's coming along, working with contractors and then working with Nicaraguan contractors, just like things take time. So this is actually the month of June. We're supposed to be done with it. So, our recovery efforts have been pretty swift. Early on, we got the factory back to being operational, but the last couple of months have been more just like fine tuning it. They're building a podcast studio. So, AJ, he's not seeing people in person as much, but he's going to be able to like have more access to doing like interviews and kind of virtual stuff, just so he can give people more of a look into the day to day, because people really are interested in him. I think he's sort of like inadvertently created this like elusive personality for himself. And so just to be able to like bring people in more on the day to day. So yeah, it's good. It's good. It's just getting tweaked and perfected. But we've been thankfully up and operational like 100% for a bit now.
What are you all working on now that you could share? Are you working on, I would think, by 2027, 2028 stuff at this point?
Yeah, we're starting the conversation about PCA next year and just some other projects. I mean, honestly, nothing at this point has been totally solidified where I can like make a comment on it. I'm not holding out on you. We just feel like I truly don't have that information.
No, I was like,
so we true. Yes. We as a company, like what I really appreciate is we don't over release. We want to let things settle in the market. We don't want to do three or four cigars a year. For the size of the company we are, that's like not as sustainable, right? You don't want to compete with your own product. So we just try to be more strategic about it, which is great because it gives us more time to focus on like one or two things. So yeah, we really aren't going to have anything, we're working on like some holiday stuff, but we're really kind of just figuring out what the big thing for next year is going to be. But, I'll let you know when I do.
Ooh. So at this point in the show, I usually like to ask each guest the same questions to kind of round out the interview. The first of those questions is, do you have a philosophy that you like to live or work by?
Yeah, I guess just like don't stress about or like fixate on like shit that's out of your control, and I think it's easy. Like, for me, I do a lot of travel and I find myself, you're like landing and you're getting your rental car and then you're trying to rush to an account and you're hitting traffic and there's like all these crazy outside factors. And you're like, God, you're like, I can't control traffic. I can't control that my plane is delayed. I can't, it is what it is. And that used to like really send me but then it's like, it's just not worth it. Like, obviously things that are in your control, like, yes, you want to be able to like manipulate that in your favor. Right. But just, I don't know, be easy, right. Take a breath, let it go, What about you? Anything? Do you have a philosophy that you kind of live by?
My philosophy in my 40s so far has been to like set boundaries, especially when it comes to work, because like was in my 30s, I was the one who would like, if I had a project, I was going to get it done and I was going to spend ample hours on it, in and out of work to get it done. And it felt like I got to the same place with it. So now I'm just like, and I tell people at work, I'm like, I work Dolly Parton hours, 9 to 5.
Awesome.
And like, so anything after that, it's not saying that I'm not working or not like paying attention, but it's like, if it's something that can wait till the next day, you won't hear from me until the next day.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's important.
Yeah. And I love Outlook, being able to set messages, schedule them to go out. Cause sometimes I respond to it right away, but then I'm like, oh, that's like a tomorrow problem. So I'm like scheduling for tomorrow, at this time, message go out. So it's like setting boundaries just to have a separation and to try to, have something else going on other than just work. My doctor told me, he was like, it's just work. So you need to kind of like figure out how to do some other stuff. Like,
yes.
And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and I think there's this added level of stress and sort of obligation when everybody knows you're like technically connected all the time, right? Your email is coming to your phone. You can see an email at 11 o'clock. It's just like, you always can be available. And it's like finding that boundary of like, okay, I know, I'm seeing this, but I'm also not going to respond because it's like midnight or like a Saturday, and like, you just need to, it's hard because you kind of are always accessible and you just want to say, hey, I need like some time where I'm not accessible.
Exactly. It's like, I just like boundaries. People need to work on boundaries and setting it for themselves and for
everybody does. Everybody does.
I want you to finish the sentence.
Okay.
Laurel Tilley is.
I don't know. My first thought was happy. I don't know. Positive.
Well, that's good. No.
Like, I don't know. Like, hot. It's hot. I'm so sweaty right now. Dying in this 90-degree weather.
well, either one works. I'm always glad to hear people are happy, especially
I don't know.
In these days and times. Like, happy is not the first word that comes to mind for a lot of people. So happy is good.
Yeah, I'll take it. Right.
Cool.
I mean, I guess it's good. This is the first thing that seems so lame, but like that is the first thing that came to my mind. So,
well, good. So, for those people who are not watching this, they might have just been listening to this interview. Can you tell people what website they need to go to, what social media they need to follow in order to get more information about AJ Fernandez Cigars?
Yeah, our website, ajfernandezcigars.com, full disclosure, we are in the process of updating it. So, but it's there. You can look at our products. AJF Cigars on Instagram. Hadela, AJ's daughter, has started working for us, and she's been really great about posting like content from the factory. So if you want to know kind of like the day-to-day process, kind of like looking into AJ's life and seeing that, that whole factory component down there, you can see a lot of really good stuff there as well.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for coming on to Deep Cuts Live. Like, we have a few other things to film, so I want you to sit tight.
Sure.
As we kind of wrap up here, but obviously you'll need to come back on at some point to to catch up, and hopefully you won't be one of these guests that it takes me like another 4 years to get back to you. Be like, oh yeah, we never did a follow up.
Oh no, I would love to do this again.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank everyone for watching and listening. If you missed any of this interview, you can see the full thing on youtube.com/deepcutslive. And you can listen to the audio version of this podcast and the others that we've done on any of the different podcasting platforms. Please leave a review. I tell people it can be a positive review, it can be a negative review. All reviews are welcome. All feedback is good. It helps us improve what we're doing here, or it helps me improve what I'm doing here. So, until next time, thank you for watching and thank you for listening, and catch you out there.
Thanks, guys.